After updating my Linux system, I thought it was about time I updated my Windows system as well. Yes, my machine dual boots Windows 10 and Linux Mint 18.1 with the Mate desktop, with each operating system on their own separate solid-state drive. I seldom boot into Windows, usually just update it when I have some download allocation left at the end of the month as far as the ISP is concerned. As this is often the sole reason that I start Windows, I usually keep an eye on it so I can reboot into Linux when it's done. After spending about 2.5 hours on this task a few days ago, I started wondering about the differences between Windows and Linux, and once again reminded myself how much I prefer my Linux system. Granted, under normal conditions, the average user would probably do whatever they were doing, while Windows did its thing in the background, and may only discover the update process when they went to shut down. Not sure how this plays in that circumstance, but I have read some horror stories of Windows updates, and I sort of consider it to be that time of the month when I do it. In no particular order, these are some of my reasons for using Linux. Bear in mind, not all of these apply to all Linux distros in all cases. However, in general they do. And also, I use the term Linux like most people do to refer to GNU Linux or GNU plus Linux. No disrespect is intended. That's my disclaimer. I'll start with choice. With Linux, it's all about choice. Start with the distro, from Arch to Zorin, Manjaro or Mint, Elementary or MX, Ubuntu and Solus, Fedora and Deepin, plus hundreds of more. And this is just the actual distro. Windows has Home and Pro, I think. Some people say that there's too many Linux distros to choose from, and Linux is fragmented as a result, and confusing to potential new users, but I sort of disagree. I started on Linux Mint 15 and was quite happy to stay on it, but like so many others, I like to tinker and I distro hop for a while. That was my choice. Linux Mint was doing everything I needed at the time, and even more than Windows was beforehand. I suspect the overabundance of distro choice is because of our own desire to try more but not really know exactly what it is we want. Think about how many makes and models of cars are available. You narrow your choice down according to your circumstances, the size, price, auto or manual, features, the manufacturer, the colour, the type of fuel that it uses and so forth. Just as many choices really. Even a new TV, tried looking at that market lately? A Windows or Mac convertee who does a little bit of research before making the change will likely find their initial choice can grow along with their needs, especially if they download and try a few live desktop sessions or test in virtual machines, just like test driving a new car really. Then we have the desktop environment after you decide on which distro you think you like. Mate or Mate, XFCE, Cinnamon, Budgie, KDE, and many others, and some I still haven't heard of. There's plenty of choice there. Once you've got that far, of course you can theme it. You can install different icon packs, select different colours, docks and panels. It's pretty endless. And if you're not sure, you can just install a few different desktop environments and log in the one you want at any given time. So there's lots of choices and you can mix and match to your heart's content. Try doing that with your next car purchase. Oh, I'm sorry, but that model doesn't come with manual gearbox or with those colours. Yeah, we've all heard that before. The next item I want to cover is cost. It's pretty much a no-brainer because most Linux distros, as you're probably aware, are free of any monetary cost. For example, Windows 10, the Home Edition, in Australian dollars, at the time of this recording, was 225 Australian dollars. That's 156 American dollars, or if you're over in Europe, it's about 140 euros. And Windows Pro in Australia is $339, 235 in US dollars, and 211 for our friends over in Europe. Of course, Mac only comes with the hardware, pretty much. So maybe consider making a donation to your favourite distro, or purchase a product they sell, or contributing to the product in some way. It's good for everyone. Updating. The bane of my Windows existence. Forced or free will? With Linux, you choose what and when to suit you. Oh, and by the way, your whole system gets updated, not just the operating system. Firefox, your Office suite, and any other software you install from your distro's available software all gets updated. Pretty neat, or what? Next is what I call one disk or one USB install. Pretty much once you've decided which distro you want to try or use, you download it, which is usually between about 1 or 2 gigabytes. Burn it to a USB or a DVD, boot it up, and then you actually get to test it on your hardware before installing it or making any changes to your system. If you want to install it, you can usually do that in less than 15 minutes. And then you've got enough software to get you up and running. The internet, Office, chat, email, system tools, and any other software is usually just a few clicks away in your software manager. In less than an hour, I can install, update, modify a new system pretty much up to what I have currently. Oh, did I mention there's no one to ask for permission, provided it's your computer, of course. There's no forms to fill in, no fees to pay, no codes to activate or enable, no trial period, no features to unlock, no spyware. No worries, mate. We move on to security, safety and privacy. With Linux, a password's required for system-wide changes or installing software, and it makes it harder to install malicious code like viruses and so forth. Sure, you might dislike having to enter your password more than with your Windows system, but your security, safety and privacy is worth it, isn't it? Not only is Linux inherently more secure, but also being such a small percent of the total market of computers in the world, it makes it less attractive to those who want to do undesired things to our computers. Those other operating systems think that it's safety in numbers. But we're not a herd of gazelles hoping that the tiger gets the weakest one. With software, the whole herd is at risk. A virus or malware isn't after one gazelle for lunch. It replicates to become a streak, or a pack of tigers. One for each gazelle. So munch on that idea. There's no corporate motivation for spying or tracking you. There's nothing to sell you. Now, there are a few cons to Linux, I suppose, and it depends where you stand on this. But is Linux perfect? No, but neither is anything in life, really, when you think about it. The terminal, the dreaded terminal. What's that? I rarely use it myself. Most stuff can actually be done in the GUI or the graphical user interface, point and click with the mouse. However, those who learn to use the terminal are rewarded for it. For the most part, if I need to use the terminal, it's because I broke something, which is a pretty rare event in itself. And then I found the answer online and then copy and paste the commands into the terminal and fix it. So thanks to all of those people that do know how to use it and put the solutions up on the internet for klutzes like myself to find. So there's nothing to fear here, really. Another one you might consider a con is just simply the names. As with many things, different companies name things differently, for example, and it's much like that with Linux. Much of what other operating systems use is in Linux also, but it just might look or function differently or simply have a different name. For example, the taskbar from Windows becomes the panel, and C:\\, your C drive, becomes /SDA, and so on. It's not that hard to learn. Right-clicking pretty much does the same thing in Linux as what it does in Windows, for example. Gaming. Yep, I get it. Linux isn't the first choice for gamers, myself included. But that said, I use Steam, and over the last year in particular, many more games now run on Linux thanks to Steam developing their Proton layer. In fact, I only have a few games left that don't run on Linux right now. The way things are going, Windows might well get a dose of the old format C:\\, in the next couple of years. It's getting better and better day by day pretty much. Other software, video editing is another one that comes up as a reason not to use Linux, although there are several choices of video editors available in Linux, which some people actually consider viable alternatives. I use Kdenlive, and I'm only a beginner. It'll be quite some time before I need some professional and likely expensive replacement. It's just not going to happen. Most software on a Mac or a Windows machine has an alternative in Linux, or another option is things like Google Docs or Microsoft 365, whatever it's called, their online office suite. This is actually why I dual boot with Windows, just for those few games. So dual booting might actually be an option for you, and it also gives you time to learn while still allowing you to have a little relapse if you really need to. Open source. This is the last thing I've got on my list here, but it probably should be the first and foremost, as this really underpins the whole Linux ecosystem, really. Community-driven, not-for-profit or corporate greed for shareholders, and developed by passionate people who like to use it for themselves as well. Being open source means many of these people read the code and look for bugs and malicious code within it. You can't do that with closed source proprietary software, and who knows what it's doing. And do you really trust these big corporate driven companies who have to deliver profit to their shareholders? They are coming from a different place. I prefer to trust a nerd living in their mum's basement. Well, maybe not, but thousands of computer coders or software developers all over the world, each checking each other's code, sounds like a good thing to me. Community driven. As far as I understand it, with open source, I give you my code and you give me back your changes. You might improve my code so we both benefit. The code gets better and better over time. Are you listening, Microsoft? Sort of like I invent the wheel and you come up with rubber tyres. Win-win. No pun intended there. To me, open source seems more like a philosophy or a way of living. Perhaps like rules to apply to life or a standard to live by. Not quite like a religion or government, Perhaps better, but that's going a little bit deep for here. A community of people constantly improving the code for all of us to use and enjoy. Sort of built from the bottom up. Whereas proprietary software is driven by a CEO telling each department what to do. Then the project managers, team leaders, head developer and so forth tell the team to write the code within the budget, within the time constraints, the way they're told. It's sort of top down. Open source, way to go. This probably should be at the top of the list, as I said, but maybe I'll just save the best bit till last.